Right, guys, welcome back. So, moving on from where we left off last, I think I was just going to get the control column done. We're going to get this fastened in and generally finish off the interior as best we can. Now, I have indeed fastened in the seat bulkhead. We've got the control column painted up, weathered and in, and I've also put some Tamiya X22 clear gloss varnish on the instrument panel where we deckled to give that illusion of glass. If I can zoom in, hopefully you can see the decals are there. We've got the seat in, got the harnesses nicely grimed up, and the control column in. Now, I will admit, I am not an expert modeler by any stretch of the imagination. I'm an average modeler that gets stuff together. But I'm actually quite happy with that cockpit. Really quite happy. I've got the other side of the cockpit here. It's all detailed up. I've got a few switches of here on this piece here to paint, which I'm going to do now. And then we can seriously think about getting this kit together. Now, I've also taken the time to glue the engine into the cradle. And if we do a dry fit, if I zoom out and do a dry fit, there we go. It actually goes together really quite well. I'm quite impressed with the fit. The locating pins click beautifully together. We turn it over, we can see all the bulkheads locate where they're supposed to locate. A little bit of tweak on this piece here, but all in all, it goes together nicely. So really, once I've got those red switches done, we can actually glue this together. I think we're at that position, which is good. We're moving along with the build. So I'm going to quickly do that. I'll do it off camera, so I'll just do it with a toothpick and drop in a bit of red paint. And then we'll come back and then we can discuss how we're going to glue this together and what we need to be careful of whilst we glue it together. Because we don't want to destroy this surface detail, and we want to try and minimize the amount of filling we want to do. But I'm actually quite chuffed how quickly this is coming together. So give me a couple of minutes. We'll come back once I've got that little last detail painted. We'll get this together and we'll be able to get the fuselage into the wings pretty quickly, and this build will be really pushing ahead quite fast. So see you in a moment. Okay, we're back, and if I zoom in, you'll be able to see the detailed parts I put in, and you're probably never going to see this when the cockpit's together, but if you can see, if it'll focus in there, I think you can see a little row of red dots just on the inside of that part there, so we've got those painted. So that's it. That's the last detail I was going to do before we put this together. Right, how are we going to put this together? Well, first things first, I want to just clean off a little bit of paint off these bulkheads. So I'll use a skinny sander. So I just want to, there we go, on the coarser side of that, very, very carefully, just wanting to, with the sponge, being very careful not to destroy my model, which I seem to be doing quite well, slipping off the part. I just want to clean off as much of the paint as I can. fastening points there and there and here. And here. And I have found I've left times before where I've left paint on joining surfaces and it just leaves a slightly weakened join, because obviously your glue has got to melt through the paint before it gets to the plastic, and it just gives, you can build an inherent weakness into the joint, which you might not realize until later on in the build, where you're maybe flexing the model for some reason or whatever, and then suddenly the joint cracks, and then no matter how much glue you put in, you can't get that good plastic to plastic bond. So I find it very important just to, on as many of the maintenance surfaces as you can, just go in and very carefully take that paint off. We want to do the fuselage halves as well. There we go. Blow away dust, and we'll have a look at this side. This side will be easier. Just to clear away now. It'll be more tricky to come in and clear this away, so I'm happy just to live with that. If one half of the joint is clear, then that's better as no halves of the joint. I'll zoom out a little bit here and then we'll lose half of the work I'm doing. There we go. So I'm not putting any pressure on the sanding stick. We are letting the sanding stick just do its work. We are only wanting to cut through the paint and prep the surface for gluing. Right, so now that we've done that, good clean up. If you need to, come in with a brush, get rid of the sand and dust. What we're going to do, I think, is we need to be careful we don't get lots of glue staining everywhere. As always, most of my major joints, when I glue them, I use Revell contactor. Well, I use actually a mix of Revell contactor and then I wash it down with Tamiya extra thin. And I find the Revell contactor in this particular bottle with the applicator gives you a nice precise application when the glue decides to flow. Sometimes the glue dries in the tube. Get yourself a lighter and just gently warm the tube. There you go. Give it a little squeeze. You can hear the air flowing, so it just burns off any blockages. So make sure there's nothing underneath, just in case we dribble. We don't want to, but you never know. You don't need to squeeze this tube very much. Just the simple act of tipping it down will send the glue going out. The heat off your hands will increase the pressure because hot air as it expands, air as it's warm, expands, and that increase of air pressure will naturally wick the glue out. I found this glue gives you a very good strong joint. Testament to that was the Catalina build. I actually dropped the Catalina just after I got it put together, well, after the glue had set, but it wasn't long after. I glued it together, dropped it onto the floor, hard laminate floor, and I only split a small part of the joint, which I thought was amazing because I thought it absolutely destroyed the model. So carefully gluing along all the bulkhead edges and along all the main panel joints. This joint here I can't clean off, so we're just going to have to hope that half the side cleaned off will be enough, as with this one here. Now the Revell contactor will it will dissolve paint, but if you've got lots of layers on, it won't touch it. Right, line it up. One shot wonder. Let's get it right first time. There we go. And squeeze. That's pretty good. I like it when models go together like this. I really do. Makes life so much easier. It does take a moment for this glue to go off, which is good, gives us a bit of working time. And my hands are very dry, so I do tend to drop stuff. It lines up really rather well. Now what we can do is get some tape on some of these joints. I have some offcuts here which I can use. But what I want to do to really help this glue cure up is wick in some extra thin. I don't know what it is about that reaction, but when you touch in extra thin on top of a Revell contactor, it just seems to make it cure up really, really strong. And it makes our life as modelers much easier because we get a good, strong bonded joint. And it also makes the Revell contactor go off that little bit quicker. So we're getting a little push out of plastic from the joint. That sort of little bead of dissolved plastic and glue and whatnot, which is fine. There are a couple of areas I may need to use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer 500 just to fill in minor imperfections, and most of that's actually been caused by me cleaning away the sprue nib marks. So we're happy with how we've got this jointed, which I'm actually not too far away now. I think what we'll do is we will get a couple of bits of tape and we'll just tape up this joint. Right, I'm actually going to change the tape there because that's a big bit of tape and I don't need a big bit of tape. I want a little short bit of tape. For the simple reason I'm probably just going to leave the tape on it. We stick it in the fuselage. Right, bottom joint, top joint, really important joint. Now we've got all this beautiful rivet detail, so we need to be careful that we glue the joint in such a way that we get a good tight bond, but we don't put so much glue on that we end up causing damage to these rivets, because it's actually going to be quite hard to repair damage to the rivets and keep it in scale and in the same sort of way that the original rivets have been made on this kit. It is really nice. So again, Revell contactor, Tamiya extra thin, and then we want to just squeeze together. But we want to be squeezing as close to the joint as we can. Don't want to be pushing on the sides of the fuselage here, because that'll just open the joint up like that. That'll squeeze it open. So we want to be pushing right at the top of the joint. If you're looking and seeing that little bead of glue and plastic coming out, we know we're getting somewhere near at hand. Now when we glue this, we're going to be leaving it for 2 to 3 days maybe. Certainly 24 hours to cure, but more like 48. Make sure you're happy with the alignment of the parts. The better aligned we get it, the less cleanup we have to do. The worse the alignment is, the more the cleanup we have to do. When we're at that point we're happy, let's get a bit of tape on it. I'm going to get some more tape. But all in all, this kit's fitting together really quite nicely. Right. This fuel tank cover. And that's the other good thing about Tamiya Extra Thin, is when you wick it into the joint, it almost rehydrates the Revell contactor if it's just starting to go off. And that gives us a bitty bit more working time. And we want to push and hold. You blow just to make sure we're drying off that glue. But I'm really quite chuffed how this aircraft's coming together. It's good. Joints are closing up. We're not having to use loads and loads of force. Just gentle force, pressure in the right places. Tape. When you're putting the tape on, give the tape a little bit of tension. Let it stretch up. Now we've got the most of the fuselage together. What we need to do is we go in here and we want to check that all the bulkheads are in the right place. So bearing in mind we've glued everything to the right hand side, so we're only looking at the left hand side fuselage. I actually think they are in not bad positions, a whole lot of them. And what we can do is just run, we can wick in a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin down the side of the bulkheads. Again, that will just soften the glue a touch. Check from the top. Yep, that's pretty good. Okay, we need to glue in this part here. And then we need to glue in the fuel tank. Again, it's just a case of wicking in the Tamiya Extra Thin. Be very careful we're not splashing it around and it gets on the inside of the cockpit, because at this stage, if it does, we're not repairing anything, so we can't pull it apart. I'm going to wick in some glue here on the engine bulkhead. That's just clicked into position. Wick a little bit more glue in here. Push that together. Now, this is where having the wings made comes in real handy, because you've got an automatic jig for holding the aircraft together. So we just pop them in and press them home. And there you go. You know you're going to have it. You know you're going to have it in the right position. And it's a really good fit. I did a little bit of fettling work here on this joint to make it as tight as we can, but it's a really, really good fit. So we can leave it at that. Look at that. That's not bad. There's going to be a filling here on the gap here. But all in all, I'm quite impressed with how that's gone together. Right, the last piece we need to look at is this top piece here. So we just need to rehydrate the Revell contactor. with Tamiya extra thin. And just gently push this together. You can see how quickly that rehydrated. It was really good. And what we need to do is get a little clip like this. We might need a couple actually. That one's no use. Right. What we can do instead is get a pair of self-gripping tweezers. Let it go in like that maybe. Just hold it together, or we can use tape. They're actually bonded together quite nicely. Right, so there we go. That is the bulk of the construction, well certainly the fuselage together. Just got the tail to sort out. So I'm just going to wick in some glue there, and we'll get a pair of tweezers on the top just to hold that, or a peg, and then we're going to leave this to cure up. And we've managed to keep the tail movable, or the rudder movable, which is good because we want to position that later on. So you get a peg on the tail. We might get a couple actually. Be careful when you've got tape on the model and you use an extra thin, because it can run, get out of the tape, and then you end up with a tape mark everywhere, and that will just not be very good at all. So if you've got extra thin on the surface, just let it go. Don't touch it, anything like that. Just gently blow on it, let it evaporate away, and then you'll be okay. Last thing you want to do is grip it with anything, because it will just leave an impression. Splendid. Right, let's leave that cure up. We'll come back when it's done, and we can actually look at getting the fuselage into the wings. Welcome back, guys. So we left off after gluing up the fuselage, and it's setting up quite nicely. I have taken the time just to put a bit of a kick-off with the rudder, just for interest. We've got the rudder actuator in place just to make sure it all fits, and that's all nice and solid now. Next thing is to get the fuselage into the wings. I've noticed that if you look here on the wings, a pointy stick. All right, here on the wings there's a detent there and a detent there, and they correspond with two little lugs here and here on the instrument panel bulkhead. And you need to make sure they engage in those two holes, otherwise it's going to misalign the fuselage to the wings. And I've kind of been looking at that to see. Now, it's a very, very close gap, which is good. But what I want to do, just to make sure that we end up with a good strong joint, is I want to get some glue into the two sort of locating areas on here, and I want to fill a bit of glue in here and here, and that will give us belt and braces when we wick in the Tamiya extra thin at the joints. So it's dead simple. Just line it up. There's a little lip here on the front that the front wing goes behind. Back of the wing just clicks in here. It's a very typical jointing system for a Spitfire, to be fair. And then push down on that bulkhead to make sure it's engaged. When it was dry fitting, you heard a little click. It was audible, but you'll know it's gone in because the wings will sit nicely down in. The fuselage will sit nicely down at the wings, and the joint between the fairing and the wing surface is nice and flush. Check the rear is in properly. There we go. Click. That's all engaged. And then come back to the top. We can look at this. Are we happy? Yes, we are. Right, this is it. Now it's time to commit to glue. I'm inclined to glue this in first here on the underside and give it 10 minutes just to grip up, and then we're going to come back and do the wings. Because there's a bit of a gap here, I'm not really too fussed about using the Revell contactor, because there's enough of a gap here to allow adequate seepage for the Tamiya extra thin to get into that joint, and that's good for us, because this plastic seems to really like Tamiya extra thin. As I said, I've got the BF109 coming, and I was going to try that with Mr. Cement S, which is my other preferred liquid glue. Right, a little bit of joggling here to try and get this mated together as best we can, but align that rear panel joint here. There is a slight difference in the curvature here to the fuselage, so I want to match it up as close as I can to avoid having to do too much filling, because I don't want to come in here and have to destroy detail and re-scribe it and re-rivet, because it's just a pain in the hoop. So a bit of gentle manipulation, nothing excessive. When we're happy, we're just going to leave that for 10 minutes. Right, now we can turn our attention to the front. So the front here, same again, we want to wick in glue between the lower sort of bulkhead underneath the engine and the wing surface, the front of the wing, and gently push that. There isn't a lot of substance to the framing, so we don't want to break anything. We just want to gently push it home. If you want, get tweezers and make sure it is, and it is, it's home nicely. Right, under cowling, chin cowling for the engine. Let's try it up, offer it up and see. Very nice fit indeed. Very nice fit. A little bit of cleanup still needed on that, I think. So I'm going to attend to that just now. So what there's another part missing, which is the front plate, front plate of the fuselage, and it'll be a backing plate to the spinner backing plate. So I'm just going to get that taken off the sprue, and then we can come back and look at the front engine cowling. So give me a minute and we'll be back. We're back, and it's part D21 we've got. Some nice detail on it, and this is going to help to ensure the propeller, well, the drive shaft from the engine is central to the rest of the aircraft, so when you put the propeller on, it is all good. Whilst we're working, we're just checking the joints to make sure we're happy with them. If we need just to run a little more glue in it, just to help ease the joint, we do that. There will be some minor filling with Mr. Surfacer, but I'm confident we won't need a huge amount of filling. If we think we need to set any of the fuselage out, then we can always go, because we've got access here, we can gently push out on the panel with a blunt and toothpick. Just gently insert it down onto the floor, and then we can gently push out any part we think needs easing. Right, so I believe we'll start with the chin first, That just slots on, and it seems to find its center quite nicely. Just going to glue it on the back. Let the glue bite a little. There we go. Now, that gives us then, with the chin on, the opportunity to start lining up the engine with this part D21. And what I think I'm going to do, just before I glue D21 in place, is I'll just take it off. It's a good snug fit. So I think what we can do is we can just wick a little bit of glue in along the sides here, certainly on this side, because it looks like a really neat fit. So we'll glue that side in, give it a moment to set up. Gentle pressure, gentle pressure. Remember, this frame is not very strong. And that's a bit of pressure on that side has brought this side up, so we're going to wick some glue in here. Gentle pressure. Right, now we'll get D21, and this will give us our center in relation to all the other panels that are going to go on next. So D21 will help secure, so we can secure the chin to D21, and we're going to start to centralize this propeller. So extra thin, gentle pressure. Come in and wick in some extra thin again, just where the joint was slightly open on that side. And we're going to hold this 10 minutes. It's not much time, but it might make the difference between it springing apart and it not springing apart. So in the interest of not killing you with boredom and me holding apart for 10 minutes, we'll just pause the recording now, and we'll come back when we look at the rest of the panels. Right, we're back. So D21 is set up nicely. Now we can go for the top cowling. So just before we seal it all up, there's the last look at the engine. Reasonable representation, although I do think there is room for improvement, and no doubt aftermarket companies will come with detail sets that will make this, will blow it out of the park. But for me, I am happy for the all closed up look. So test fit on the top cowling fits really rather nicely. I have done a little bit of seam work here just to knock down the seam, so we don't, when we come back in, we don't destroy any of this detail. Now, what I do use on these, I always use a metal file for this, is gently file across, making sure the file is set squarely on the edge, and that ensures we get a good straight edge. Same on the front. There is a little bit of burn still left on this panel I've not cleaned off. So light pressure, let the metal file do its work. It's good sharp teeth so it cuts the plastic cleanly. There we go, clean. Right, test fit. That's actually really rather nice, isn't it? Beautiful joint there on the back. Beautiful joint there on the front. And it's really bringing the strength up on this. And then we'll go and test fit the side panels. And again, that's really rather nice, that. And we've got the holes lined up for the exhaust. And we'll do this side too. And I'm doing this before I glue on the top, just to see if there's any problems, issues, or anything we need to look at before we commit to glue. And again, that's a really nice fit. Now, there are 2 wing fillets to go in. So I'm going to put them in before I put the cowlings on, just in case. And the last piece I'm going to glue in is these pieces here. So let me get those 2 wing fillets, and then we'll get cracking on getting the cowlings on, and then we can look at the horizontal stabilizers. And this kit is really starting to fly together. It's really rather good. Again, I'm just impressed. For all the faults in it and the inaccuracies, the actual build quality is good. And it's what Border has become renowned for, is a good solid build. Right, let me find these parts and then we'll come back. We're back, and these are the parts I'm talking about, these little fillets that go in to the front leading edge of the wing. Now, they're not actually included on the instructions, before I've missed them off. I actually think you're supposed to put them on before you put the fuselage into the wings. Well, there you go. So you are looking at part D29, B2 and B29. Another resounding fail from Border. Hey ho. We're getting used to really bad instructions. Now that side is fitting in not too bad. The other side I had to do a bit of fettling work. This side I think I'm going to do the same work. So all I did is here there's a mold mark. It's taking a file and we're just filing that smooth. Just to ease it in, create less bulk for it to get squeezed into the space. The other thing I did was just run the file along this bottom edge here. Again, just to remove any possible impedances. And same on the inside. Make sure any sprue nibs along this edge are cut clear and flush. Little file. Right. And then it should just slip in. The other side did after doing that little bit of work, and yet that's so much easier. Excellent. So it gently pushes down and locks in. Now, glue. So a slight change of plans, because obviously I was going to leave this to last, but I'm doing this now. So I want to wick in a generous amount of glue. Now I'm not talking about pouring the bottle over the joints. I am talking about just make sure there's enough glue that it's going to penetrate down through the joint. It's not just going to sit in the surface. And then that also gives us a little bit of lubrication before the glue cures up to push that part fully home. And making sure we're leaving it level with the wing surface, and that the front leading edge joint is nice too, which it is. And the better we get the fit now, the less filling and sanding we're going to have to do later. Right, obviously because we've glued the front joint, we want to get this joint done just in case the glue's wicking down there. Again, a generous amount of glue, so a good brushful, and you want to work roughly about a third of the length of the joint. Make sure there's plenty of glue all through the joint. When we've got the joint full of glue, we want to then just press down, and it just nudges in that last fraction, and then we can just hold it. It only takes about 10 minutes for this glue to cure up to any sense of strength, and after that it should be able to hold itself. But the joint itself, there's a little swipe of maybe missed the surface of 1000. I don't even think you need the 500 for this. This joint is gluing together beautifully. Really, really, really nice. I'm really impressed with how the fit of the Border parts are. So I'm going to hold these parts in place for a moment. When I'm satisfied they're going to hold themselves, I will come back and we'll then continue on gluing the engine cowlings in place. So we'll see you in a moment.